Well, hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the build of the Skymaster F14 Tomcat aircraft. We are making some great progress on this aircraft, so stay tuned and we will get back into the build of the F14. All right, so last video, we essentially got all of the back end stuff organized, run forward, and we got the nose bolted on the aircraft. Now things get very serious with organizing everything in the front of this aircraft. So we got tons of wires to deal with, tons of tubes to deal with. So again, this video is going to be a little bit scattered, but it's all going to be focused on the organizing of the front end of the aircraft. So first thing we need to do is we need to build a tray in this front section to house or support all of our equipment that we need to mount in this section, which is UATs, turbine ECUs or data relay modules, and compressor, that kind of stuff. So that's what's the first task on the docket here, is to make that front tray. So let's dive into this thing. Okay, so working on the tray design here. So basically we've got ridges inside the fuselage in this back section. Now those ridges relate to the ones right there. Okay, so basically those are the stiffest points of this part of the fuselage. So they've got the most glue on them. They're nice and stiff to the touch. The rest of it is a little bit soft and flexible. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount our hard points for that tray on the ridge itself. So I've taken a piece of, this is 3/4 inch ply, and we have used my sander and basically sanded a profile there for the ridge that's going to mount on. So that's what we're going to basically glue down with Hysol on top of those little ridges. Now, the reason I'm going with such a big spacer is because I want to run all my wires and tubes and everything, or most of them, underneath that tray, and I don't want it to be a tight fit. I want it to be nice and free, okay? And I'm just kind of thinking through all of this as we progress and stuff, but I'll probably be running those wires and stuff underneath the tray, and then we'll come up through these holes and then plug into the main board for the jetty stuff. So that's what's kind of my first thought here and what's going to happen. Now initially I was thinking we're going to put all the air stuff right there, but if we can fit the air stuff right here, I'm definitely going to put the air stuff right here because it just makes more sense to me to have it in this area. Less lines to run forward, just lots of benefits to having it in this area. But first step for this tray is to get these things glued in place. All right, so we're jumping around a little bit here. So what I've done is I took some airline tubing, and I probably should have videoed this, but basically I cut a piece of airline tubing, I cut a sliver to go inside the airline tubing, and then I cut a half piece to go on the outside of the airline tubing, and ultimately we've created our lights here, our green, our amber or yellow, and then red. So I'm going to put a drop of shoe goop on the face of these to seal them all off and make them look nice and smooth. Once that shoe goop kind of settles down, it'll make nice clear lenses over top of those things. And we're jumping around a little bit because I can't touch the fuselage right now because we're waiting for those little pieces I glued in to cure. So we are going to be bolting the nose leg in soon, which that's why I needed to get these lights done. And while we're here on the nose, we're going to work on the steering setup. So basically what we've done is put the servo on the top side. So now this is perfectly in line, so we could use a clevis very nicely there. And we're setting this up. So right now the wheel or the whole steering system is straight. So we want to be pretty much at a right angle with the clevis, which is kind of right there. I haven't plugged the servo in yet, but that gives you an idea of kind of the geometry that we're looking at here. And I think that'll work out nicely. So next thing we need to do on the steering servo here is plug that guy in and then get the servo arm mounted. All right, so we figured out what channel the nose steering was. So it's channel 14. And we've gone in and plugged that in and got the servo arm kind of positioned where we want it to be. Again, we want to be at kind of a right angle on this setup is going to be the best thing. So when I take this clevis, plug it onto the servo arm, we just need a little short section of 440 rod. So I'm going to get that set up and we'll see if we can make this steering complete. All right, so we've got everything all set up here with the steering, and it's all nicely centered. So one little trick here is I take a straight edge and you just line it up with the edge of the aluminum housing there, and of course that's a nice easy way to work on getting that straight. We can adjust that with sub trim and stuff, but it's nice to mechanically get it set up so it's perfectly centered. So now we're going to get these all fastened up on the servo horn portion, and the steering is complete. All right, so some people have wondered how to fill these things up with air, so I don't think I demonstrated that well when I did the servicing on the gear. So anyways, the kit comes with this this cylinder here, which is it's sealed off until you push the little nipple in, and then there's an air fitting, a one-way air fitting on the bottom. So what you do is you hook your pump up to that. I like to use the Robart pump because you get better control. And we will put this at 60 just to see how it feels. So now we're sitting at 60 PSI. All you do is you take it and you push it on the fitting here, and it's going to charge the air system. There we go. So now there's 60 PSI in that gear, which may be a lot, but we need to adjust it when the aircraft is sitting by itself on its wheels and all that kind of stuff. So, but we definitely want it to be strong enough so there's just a little bit of sag when the aircraft's sitting down, but we want that nose to be reasonable. So yeah, it's probably a bit much. I'm going to take a little bit out right now. Now it's easier to take this out if you flip the gear upside down, so it's not exactly easy to do inside the aircraft, because if this is flipped the other way, what's going to happen is you push that nipple, you're going to have oil coming out. Now that's not a huge big deal, but I'd rather be a little bit softer on the nose and have to add air than be too much and have to take out air when it's in the aircraft. So that's better. Nice and smooth. So anyways, that's how you add air to the gear system. All right, so we got the tray cut there, and it's just resting in place just to check the fit, and it works out good. So happy with that. We're going to pull it out and paint it, and while we're waiting for that paint, we're going to get the nose gear back in. Now basically, if you remember in one of the first videos, we just need a special tool to actually get in that area. And that special tool is basically just a little mini wrench setup. So we're going to get that taken care of. This piece right here, this is just a sacrificial piece. So this actually just snaps off. We may have to use a saw to get that off, but the F-18 has the same thing here. So what we'll do is we'll get the gear in place and then we'll pop this guy off. I think that's just for shipping and plane setup and everything, because this holds this this front section kind of together, right? So, and then once the gear is installed, the gear is basically doing that same thing, but this does get in the way if you try and leave it, and this is where your servo goes into right there. So pulling that out, painting it, getting the gear in. All right, so just working on the routing of the airline for the front gear. And I just want to show you guys a couple things here. These are things that I try to do on these builds to build a long-lasting aircraft. So first thing is the blue airline. It runs over top of the G10 support here, or the piece that holds the door on. So if we run that blue line over that G10 fiberglass material over time, it could rub through the blue airline, and this area is not going to be easy to inspect because our central box is going to be located right on top in this area. So what I did was take some spiral wrap and put that over top. Now this spiral wrap is like thick, heavy plastic stuff, and you just wrap it around servo lines, airlines, stuff like that. And anyways, so that is number one. Now number two here, the way this was mounted before is with the zip ties, and it's going to be fairly important for us to use zip ties in this area. Basically what we need to prevent this door from sliding backwards. Okay, so if this gear is down, door slides backwards. This door, when it's jammed in like that, okay, it's not going to line up properly, and that will actually prevent the gear from going up, because right now it's jammed in there and it won't go up all the way. So that could definitely be an issue. So these are the kind of things that I want to deal with at the build phase. So it needs to be down all the way like that, so our little bends can actually fit in the right spot. So we're going to make sure we get this zip tie nice and snug, okay, to make sure that this is held in place. But as a secondary measure, what we're going to do is put a little bit of shoe goop right here or behind the G10 pieces, and that's going to prevent it from sliding upwards that direction. And we can do the same thing on this upper one. Doesn't have to be a big dot or a big splooge, just a nice little dot of shoe goop's going to help with that a lot. So anyways, just wanted to talk about that because those are things that I try to foreshadow and try to make sure that we do those little things that make this aircraft last longer. Well, and if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know that this is the time when I just spend time sitting and thinking and sitting and thinking. So I have taken the rear cockpit apart because there is absolutely no way to get that in without taking it apart. So I think when they put these things together, like I said in my original first video, I think first or second video, I think they put them through the back. So we took the instrument panel off, and which is fine. We're just going to have to put this in and out in multiple pieces, no big deal. So the reason I wanted to get this cockpit in is to have an idea how much space we have underneath everything. So not tons for sure, but there is enough that we'll be able to plug all of our wires and stuff in. But we can probably fit our finger, so about 1/2 inch above the main board here. But that what that tells me is we can't raise this central box up at all. It's got to be mounted basically as kind of as low as possible. So, but our servo wires will have plenty of space there, which is nice. So that's the reason why I did that, is because we really need to know how much room we actually have here. That cockpit's not pulled up right now, but I will pull it up there. And you can see that we do have some room there, which is good. So our MPX connectors, the main battery connectors there, we may have to, they might be okay, but. So those main MPX connectors, we will probably end up soldering the battery connections on sideways, which is awesome. That's one of the nice things about those MPX connectors. Anyways, so that is where we're going to end up mounting the central box, which is what I was originally planning anyways. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to high-sol some small pieces of blocking on the side of these rails for the landing gear, so we have somewhere to screw into, because right now our screws are just on the inside of there. Now that won't interfere with anything, which is good. The only thing we have to be mindful of is getting our spacing proper, so this landing gear servo, the front nose servo, has somewhere to go and it's not interfering with anything on the central box. So that's going to be a good layout. But like I say, this is the point in the build when I just spend time thinking. Honestly, guys, I will sit on my little stool here and ponder things with music playing in the background for hours, and I'm not exaggerating, hours. Just thinking about stuff, thinking about things, putting things here, playing with it, visualizing, looking at it, and that is my process. So, all right, guys, so we have the compressor mounted there on the side of the fuselage. It's just resting in place while the glue or the epoxy cures. So I think that's going to be an awesome spot for that thing, and that'll give us enough room to do everything we need to do in there, I hope. Other thing I did was glued some maple blocks in between the gear mounts here, and that's where our central box is going to mount. So we're going to tuck it all the way this direction aft in the plane. It's going to sit kind of right against that former there, and then the front bolts are in line with those little marks. I've used West Systems 610 to actually glue this in, but that little piece of CA there, that's actually just to hold the piece of wood from moving up and down. We didn't have any room for a clamp or anything like that, and I cut it just the right size so it wasn't a super tight fit to allow some room for glue there. So that's how I'm getting that block to stay. So we need to leave that stuff just to do its curing thing, and once that stuff is cured, we can come back and start digging around in that airplane. Okay, so just toying with some more layouts of the equipment, and I think this is what we've settled on. So the compressor is mounted on the side there of the fuselage, and it's all nice and stuck now, so that's a great spot for that. And what we're dealing with now is the rest of the items. So basically we've got UAT bubble trap with the 3D mounts that we carry here at the lighter side of RC. I think we're going to put the data relay modules or ECUs in between the UATs because we don't need access to them, or very good access. We're going to put the air controller for the landing gear setup right there. And then I think our other air valves to control the canopy and the air brake. So we've got 3 more Jetronic valves going in there, and I think that area is perfect for them. Now I have mounted the central box on the maple pieces that we glued in earlier, and that worked out perfectly. So nice spot to mount that. And the last thing here, the last important thing I think, is the fuel pumps, which we're going to mount. I think right there is perfect. Because I don't think there's going to be any room down in that area. So basically what I'm doing is just getting this layout completed, kind of getting my head wrapped around everything, and then we can pull this back tray out, get all the stuff that we need to get mounted on there, and kind of figure out our layouts with everything, and then we can put that tray back in. So initially we want to get those UATs mounted, probably the ECUs for the turbine mounted back there, and because that's the hard to reach stuff, and we can get all this wire run underneath that tray up to beside the central box, and then once that stuff is laid out, then our area becomes a lot cleaner as well too. Now we do have some things that I completely forgot about, and this is something that I mentioned before. So we have the wire for the landing light that needs to run back to the lighting controller, so we've got to run a line back for that. We've also got the chin pod. I can't remember if I ran a cable forward for that, so we've got to run that back as well too. So those are the lighting things we need to run backwards, and I think that's everything, but there's probably going to be some more stuff that pops up. All right, so here is the challenge of how to fit all this stuff on the one gear tray. So we've kind of played around with this for a little bit, just trying to maximize the amount of space. Now the UATs are basically fixed. Now these UAT mounts, these are on my website. They're 3D printed. They're awesome little units. And then we're using MAP or Model Aviation Products bubble traps on this, this aircraft. I am a big fan of these things because they are simple. They've got a massive filter in them and high flow fittings on them for 8mm Festo. They're inexpensive, they work, and they are just a great unit. There's been a few companies that have approached me about the fancy glass ones. I've never used one myself, and I mean, they're cool looking, but I like to keep it simple, and these things are also made in Canada, which is awesome. So that's our location for our two ECUs or relay modules. This is going to be a through fitting. I think this is kind of our final layout here as far as what is going to be workable. The through fitting is just where all of our airlines and stuff are going to come through. So still thinking about that, but I think that is what we're going to settle on. All right, guys, and I got to tell you that when you're doing stuff like this, having the hardware kits from RTL Fasteners is absolutely amazing. So I love having these kits kicking around because I just open it up. I've got those screws there, which I used on the data relay modules. I've got the standard servo screws, which I've basically used on everything else. So I do have a discount code for you. If you go to rtlfasteners.com and use the discount code JV30, you will get 30% off your orders of $25 or more at rtlfasteners.com. And it is time for another episode of Tip Time, brought to you by Trusty Bent Screwdriver. Trusty's over there in the apron, so I'm not going to walk over there and get Trusty. All right, so tip time this episode is dealing with these screws. So don't necessarily worry about getting the right size or right length of screws, because if you look here, I've already done this to some of them, where we have cut off and ground down those screws. So the screws for the bubble traps, those are standard like wood screws. We cut those ones off, sanded them down. We'll do the same thing with all these other guys. And what I do to cut these servo screws off is take a pair of side cutters, not these ones, bigger ones, go like this and just snip them off. They come off pretty easy, and usually they're close enough that you can just leave them, but if you need to sand them down, just sand them down, and then they're not going to cut your wires. Don't leave your bottom of your tray is looking like that, because that is an accident waiting to happen. All right, we're going to do some mind-blowing discussions here on how to set up your air system. So when you think about an aircraft like the 14, you've got a bunch of things going on here. You've got your air brakes, right? You've got your canopy, and you've got your gear doors and gear system, and then on your mains, you've got your brakes. Well, the only time you need brakes, canopy, air brakes. Well, air brakes could be a questionable thing, but really, you're not using the air brakes in standard flight. That's just basically a landing phase thing. So we're going to set that up this way as well too. But you're using all of those things just when your gear is down. So what do we do in this case? Basically, we've got our main controller. It's got two air inputs. So we've got an air input on the back side here for the gear and doors. We've got an air input on this side, the back side there, for the brakes, okay? And then we've got our other Jetronic valves. Now this is going to be, we'll just say air brakes at the back, and this is going to be canopy. So what you can do is whatever one of these, I don't know which one it is yet, whatever one is our gear down valve. Let's just say it's this last one here. Okay, so you have air coming out here, and this is going to your gear down condition. What you can do is add a T here, and that T off of your gear down can feed your air inputs on everything else. Now the benefit to doing that is if you have a leak in your air brake, your brakes, your whatever, that doesn't happen until your gear is down. So that's the primary benefit. The secondary benefit is a little bit of a fail-safe here where your canopy won't open unless your gear is down. Now, of course, if you're in landing phase, you don't want your canopy to open if your gear is down anyway, so you should do a radio condition where something's set up there to save it. But regardless, that is how we're going to set this up. So this gear down side, we are then going to feed all this other stuff. That also simplifies the layout of everything here as well too. We don't need to have all these different airlines coming to all these different valves. We can just have one T and then splitting off to all the different items. So keep that in mind if you're setting something up. Obviously do it however you want to do it, but that's how I kind of like to set my things up on aircraft like this, because there's a lot going on and we want to try and build in as much fail-safe as possible. And there's our tray with all of our air supply figured out. So as you can see here, I did exactly what we talked about. So our gear down line, these are also marked now as well too. So we've got gear up, gear down, doors close, doors open, and our brake line. So we connected this to the receiver and just got those all marked out for reference. So then on our gear down condition here, that powers the brakes and then of course runs to all of our different Jetronic valves. So then our main feed here, which comes off this side, we just ran it through the circle through fitting, and this is going to connect to everything in the fuselage. So basically, in its simplest form, this is going to have a T, and one side of the T is going to connect to the line coming from the back of the aircraft, which is the tanks and the airfill valve and stuff like that. And then the other side of the T is going to connect to the onboard compressor. And I'd just like to take a moment and say thank you to each and every one of you that has donated to the shop build. Thank you so much for your donations. As your names scroll across the screen here, this is everybody that has donated to the shop build. So whether it's a big donation or a small donation, they all matter and they're all awesome. So thank you so much for those donations. It is very appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so before we can close any of this up and put that tray in, we need to get our lines run for the light system, and we need to get those run back. So that's the next thing I'm going to do, is get those lines run back towards the controller. We could fish it through afterwards, but it's just, well, honestly not, because we want everything to go underneath the tray. So that's the next project I'm working on, is getting these things extended and fished back to the lighting controller. All right, so also glued the hinge pod in place. We just did that. Of course, we need to do that because there's a wire coming through into the light on the chin pod. So this is curing right now. Once it's done, we'll take the tape off and work on running the wire backwards. All right, guys, so it doesn't look like much has been accomplished, but we have got the extensions for the chin pod light and the nose gear light installed. The chin pod is all installed and looks wonderful, nice and solid, everything's good. Ran the wires up there, as you can see, and forward there. So it really wasn't too bad to get the wires through. I basically used my rigid wire, just fished that all the way through. Fortunately, the F-14 has a pretty clear path to get things back and forth. So that's not really a problem. But we've got them all plugged in to the light controller, and of course we've added them to our layout here as well too. So pretty simple. We've got 5 outputs left, which is 3 from the back and 2 from the wings. So that'll be fairly straightforward. The wing ones, we still need to run those that direction. So the wing ones are needing to be installed still. But I think that's going to be everything for this episode. We've done a ton of organizing in this F-14, and we should be able to organize everything in the next episode and have all of the wiring complete, which is awesome. So we do have some pilots on the way as well too. We're going to basically just come up with a weight amount for the batteries when we do the center of gravity on the aircraft. But next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on getting all of the wire ends done, getting the main tray installed, but of course we couldn't install the main tray until we get all that stuff figured out that the main tray covers up. So there's still a ton of work to do in the front of this aircraft, but we are making some good progress. This thing's getting close to being finished, so awesome. So thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you like the video. Hit that subscribe button down below if you are not a subscriber to the channel, and we will see you in the next video.